What if I told you that one single article has thrown Zambia's politics into total confusion? Remmy Chongo, a man many dismissed as just another writer, has now become the center of a storm. Why? Because he dared ask a dangerous question. Is Edgar Lungu really dead, or is this part of a bigger conspiracy? Within hours of his article, Zambia was on fire. Some called him a hero, others branded him a liar. But one thing is clear, his words have reopened the deepest wounds in our nation's politics. Could it be that Edgar Lungu is alive, hiding behind a carefully planned secret? Or is this all legal theater, speculation wearing a wig, designed to distract us from the real battles? Stay with us, because in the next few minutes, we will uncover how one man's words have put Zambia back on edge, and why this drama may reveal more about our future than our past. What if I told you that Zambia's political stage has just been shaken by one man's article? Remmy Chongo has sparked nationwide debate with explosive claims linking former President Edgar Lungu to a shocking conspiracy. Could Lungu still be alive? Or is this just political theater designed to divide the nation? In this documentary-style breakdown, we investigate the legal drama surrounding Remmy Chongo's bold article, why Edgar Lungu's name still haunts Zambia's politics, the conspiracy theories gripping Lusaka and beyond, what this means for President Hakainde Hichilema, HH, and Zambia's fragile democracy. Stay tuned till the end, because the truth behind this drama may be bigger than anyone expected. The man who asked too much in every nation's history, there are moments when a single voice dares to ask the question no one else will. In Zambia today, that voice belongs to Remmy Chongo. Little known to the wider public until recently, Chongo emerged not as a politician, nor as a celebrity, but as an ordinary man willing to challenge an extraordinary story, the reported death of former President Edgar Lungu. When the news of Lungu's passing broke, Zambia entered a storm of grief and controversy. But while many accepted the official narrative, Chongo stood apart. With a sharp eye for inconsistencies, he raised a question that shook the foundations of the story. Was Lungu really dead? Or was something far more complex unfolding behind the scenes? In the days that followed, Chongo's persistence turned him from a bystander into a central figure in a growing legal and political storm. He filed petitions, sought answers in court, and demanded clarity where others had chosen silence. His actions infuriated some, inspired others, and puzzled nearly everyone. But why Chongo? What drives a man to take on the state, the political establishment, and even the legacy of a former president? To understand him, we must examine not only his claims, but the courage or recklessness it takes to ask forbidden questions in a nation where politics and secrecy are tightly interwoven. For Chongo, the mystery of Edgar Lungu's fate was never just about a man. It was about the integrity of Zambia itself, the truth of its leaders, the transparency of its institutions, and the future of its democracy. Whether he was right or wrong, his refusal to stay silent transformed him into a lightning rod for a divided nation. In the end, Remmy Chongo became more than a voice. He became a symbol of doubt, defiance, and the unrelenting pursuit of answers in the face of power. And as we will soon discover, the question he asked was not the last. It was only the beginning. The body that wouldn't rest in Zambia, a burial is not merely a ceremony. It is closure, a final act of respect that allows a nation to grieve and a family to heal. But when it came to Edgar Lungu, Zambia's sixth president, closure never came so easily. From the very moment his death was announced, the body at the center of it all became a mystery. Initial reports suggested swift arrangements, the embalming, the transport, the funeral. Yet days turned into weeks, and questions began to grow louder. Why was the burial delayed? Why did stories from officials and family members contradict one another? And most importantly, was the body that lay in the morgue truly Edgar Lungu? The more the process dragged on, the deeper the suspicions ran. In Lusaka, whispers filled the streets. Some claimed the government was stalling, buying time to settle internal disputes. Others believed the family was resisting state pressure, determined to protect their patriarch from what they saw as political exploitation. But the doubts did not end there. Photographs leaked online, showing inconsistencies in the body said to be Lungu's. Anonymous morgue workers spoke of restricted access and sealed files. For the first time in Zambia's history, a presidential burial became a battleground of narratives, each side insisting on its version of the truth. For the people, the waiting became unbearable. Every postponement chipped away at trust. Was this truly a moment of mourning, or was something being hidden? And if so, by whom? In the end, the body of Edgar Lungu, whether lying in state or locked away in secrecy, became more than a vessel of grief. It became a symbol of Zambia's divisions, a nation torn between acceptance and suspicion, between memory and conspiracy. For Remmy Chongo and others who refused to stay silent, the unsettled burial was not just about tradition. It was about evidence, and became the spark that pushed Zambia into uncharted legal and political waters. The body of Edgar Lungu, it seemed, would not rest, and neither would the questions that followed. Courtroom whispers and political thunder. If Zambia's streets were filled with whispers, its courtrooms soon thundered with the echoes of dispute. The mystery surrounding Edgar Lungu's body did not stay confined to family arguments or private speculation. It marched into the heart of the justice system, where silence was no longer an option. Remmy Chongo, the man who had dared to question the unthinkable, became the face of legal defiance. Filing petitions, demanding hearings, and pressing for transparency, he forced judges and lawyers to confront the question no one wanted on record. Was Edgar Lungu truly dead? Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was heavy. Government lawyers argued with authority, insisting that the former president had indeed passed and that the state had followed procedure. But Chongo's camp countered with inconsistencies, timelines that did not match, medical documents that were never released, and testimonies that raised more doubt than certainty. Reporters watched closely as each hearing unfolded like political theater. Every statement was dissected, every ruling scrutinized. But beneath the legal jargon lay something more dangerous, the possibility that the courts themselves could become political tools. If they ruled too strongly against the state, they risked defiance. If they leaned too close to the government, they risked losing public trust. And so Zambia's judiciary found itself at the center of a storm, balancing between law and politics, between fact and speculation. Behind closed doors, whispers suggested pressure on judges, hidden deals, and promises made to keep the truth contained. But the louder the whispers grew, the more thunderous the impact outside the courtroom. Protesters gathered, social media erupted, and the people demanded clarity. For many, the trial was no longer about Edgar Lungu alone. It was about the soul of Zambia's democracy. In that tense courtroom, one question lingered in every corner. Was this a genuine pursuit of truth or a carefully staged performance to silence it? The gavel would fall, but the storm was only beginning. Ghosts in the morgue far from Zambia's borders, in the cold, sterile halls of a Pretoria morgue, the mystery of Edgar Lungu's death deepened. This was no ordinary storage of a former head of state. It was a guarded space, sealed by silence and cloaked in shadows. From the very beginning, reports from South Africa were inconsistent. Some claimed Lungu's body had been embalmed immediately. Others said it had been delayed. Officials insisted the former president was in state care, but witnesses whispered of restricted access, sealed documents, and more workers threatened into silence. And then came the photographs. Grainy, half-hidden images that appeared online, supposedly of Lungu's remains. But rather than bringing closure, they sparked chaos. The body shown did not match in detail. Was it him? Or was Zambia staring at someone else entirely? Whistleblowers from inside Pretoria spoke in hushed tones. They described mysterious late-night visits, guarded transfers, and files stamped confidential. Even doctors who had been part of earlier medical checks refused to comment publicly. The silence itself became suspicious. Forensic experts weighed in, noting that certain autopsy results had never been released. Why? If this was truly Edgar Lungu, why not make the evidence clear and undeniable? The morgue, in many ways, became a stage. On one side stood the officials insisting on order, procedure, and respect for the dead. On the other stood critics, journalists, and Remmy Chongo himself, who argued that secrecy had turned mourning into manipulation. For Zambia, Pretoria became more than a place. It became a symbol of uncertainty, a foreign chamber where the truth about their former president seemed trapped behind locked doors. And the more questions that emerged, the more ghostly the figure of Edgar Lungu became. Was he truly lying there waiting for final rites? Or was his name being used in a larger conspiracy, one that stretched beyond borders and deep into the corridors of power? The morgue held the answers. But for now, it also held the ghosts. The conspiracy web, every mystery, has its shadows. But in the case of Edgar Lungu, the shadows stretched far beyond Zambia's borders, weaving a web of politics, money, and power that few could untangle. At the heart of the story lay one unsettling question: who benefits from Edgar Lungu's death, and who benefits if he is still alive? For some, the answer pointed straight to politics. Lungu's death, if true, would close the chapter on a controversial presidency, giving his rivals space to reshape Zambia without fear of his return. His absence cleared the way for the ruling party to consolidate control, silence old battles, and secure its grip on the state. But others saw different fingerprints on the web. South African officials, some claimed, were unusually secretive about their role in handling Lungu's body. Why? Was it simply diplomatic caution? Or was Pretoria hiding something that could destabilize not just Zambia but the region itself? Then came whispers of financial motives. Rumors of offshore accounts, frozen assets, and legal battles waiting to erupt. If Lungu was truly dead, billions in property and investments would be unlocked. If he was alive, those resources would remain in limbo, a tempting reason for silence or deception. Even the family found themselves caught in the storm. Esther Lungu's guarded words were seen by some as coded signals, by others as proof of her own entanglement in a struggle that went beyond grief. Was she protecting her husband's legacy or protecting something else? And through it all, Remmy Chongo's voice refused to fade. By dragging these questions into the public arena, he forced Zambians to look beyond the coffin and see the wider battlefield, a place where governments, families, and foreign powers all pulled invisible strings. The more threads one pulled, the larger the web appeared. What began as a death announcement had spiraled into a conspiracy that touched every corner of Zambia's political life. And at the center of it all lay one chilling thought. Perhaps the question was never about life or death, but about power itself. Esther's silence, Esther's signal in Zambia. One voice was expected to bring clarity to the storm, the widow of Edgar Lungu, Esther. But instead of certainty, her silence and her rare, carefully chosen words only deepened the mystery. From the very start, Esther's public appearances were marked by restraint. She mourned her husband, yet often avoided confirming key details about his death. When pressed, she offered guarded phrases that left more questions than answers. Was this grief or was it strategy? Her silence became a language of its own. For some, it was the quiet dignity of a widow protecting her family's privacy. For others, it was a deliberate signal, a way of suggesting that the official story was not the whole story. And then came the outbursts. At times, Esther broke her silence with statements that shocked the nation. She accused certain leaders of disrespect, hinted at plots against her family, and warned that Edgar's legacy was being twisted for political gain. Each word she spoke sent ripples through Zambia's already fragile political landscape. Observers began to read her every move as a code. When she stood firm against state-led burial plans, was it out of tradition, or was she resisting a cover-up? When she hinted at betrayal, was she speaking of personal grief or revealing knowledge of a deeper conspiracy? The family divide added another layer. While some relatives sided with the government's plans, Esther remained defiant. Her determination to control the narrative, and perhaps the body itself, turned her into both a symbol of loyalty and a target of suspicion. In a nation starved of clarity, Esther Lungu became an enigma. Supporters saw a grieving widow fighting for truth. Critics saw a strategist carefully shaping events to protect hidden interests. But one thing was certain, her silence was not emptiness. It was power, and every signal she sent carried the weight of a secret that the nation was desperate to uncover. Was Esther shielding her family from exploitation, or shielding Zambia from a truth too dangerous to face? When the state becomes the suspect in moments of crisis, the people look to their government for clarity. But in Zambia's unfolding drama, the government's actions only fueled deeper suspicion. At first, officials spoke with confidence. Edgar Lungu was dead, they said, and preparations for a state funeral were underway. But as days passed, contradictions emerged. One minister promised swift burial, another hinted at delays. Timelines shifted, details clashed, and the people were left wondering, was this confusion or concealment? The dispute over Lungu's final resting place only worsened the distrust. The state insisted on Embassy Park, the official burial site for presidents. The family resisted, citing tradition and privacy. Instead of uniting a grieving nation, the argument fractured it further, leaving citizens to question the motives behind every decision. Then came the restrictions. Journalists found themselves blocked from accessing Morgue records. Photographs of the body were dismissed as fake. Officials refused to release medical reports or autopsy findings. Each act of secrecy hardened the belief that the state was hiding more than it revealed. Behind closed doors, whispers spread of political calculations. Some argued that the government wanted to control the burial as a show of dominance, proving that even in death, Lungu remained under their authority. Others believed the state feared the truth, that public confirmation might reveal inconsistencies too large to ignore. Protests broke out, both online and in the streets. Citizens demanded answers, chanting not just for Lungu, but for the truth itself. In a country where politics has long been shadowed by mistrust, the government's every move was scrutinized through the lens of conspiracy. By now, suspicion had turned inward. It was no longer just about whether Edgar Lungu was alive or dead. It was about whether the very institutions meant to protect Zambia's democracy had become part of the deception. For many, the government was no longer the bearer of truth. It was the prime suspect. And as the cracks widened, one chilling thought took root. If the state cannot be trusted, then who can? The resurrection question in the shadows of Zambia's uncertainty, one question refuses to die. Could Edgar Lungu still be alive? It sounds impossible, outrageous even. And yet, rumors began to spread like wildfire. In markets, in taxis, and on social media, stories surfaced of people claiming to have seen him. A blurred photograph here, a whispered sighting there. Some insisted they spotted Lungu in South Africa. Others swore he had been seen in Zimbabwe. To his supporters, every rumor felt like hope reborn. But these stories did more than stir emotions. They challenged the very foundation of the official narrative. If Lungu was alive, then what was in the coffin? If the government knew, why would it hide such a truth? Leaked audios only added fuel to the fire. Anonymous voices spoke of secret hospital visits, coded communications, and even diplomatic protection. Each recording was murky, unverified, but powerful enough to convince many that something extraordinary was being concealed. Religious groups seized on the uncertainty, framing it as symbolic. Some described Lungu's death and possible resurrection as a sign for Zambia, a moment of divine judgment on politics and power. Conspiracy theorists went further, weaving tales of body doubles, stage deaths, and international plots. For critics, these claims bordered on the absurd. But for believers, the lack of transparency was proof in itself. After all, if the state had nothing to hide, why were the autopsy results locked away? Why was the family divided? Why were simple questions met with silence? The resurrection question was no longer about fact alone. It had become a reflection of trust, belief, and fear. A symbol of a nation so divided that truth itself seemed negotiable. Whether Edgar Lungu walked among the living or not, the idea that he might still be alive was powerful enough to shake Zambia's politics to its core. And in the end, that possibility, however unlikely, was more dangerous than any certainty.